Welcome, and thank you all for joining us for this episode of the Crexi Podcast, an insider's look at all things commercial real estate. In this show, we cover a broad range of topics that cater to CRE newcomers and industry leaders alike. I'm your host, Ashley Kobovich, Director of Partnerships here at Crexi. And today we are thrilled to sit down with Justin Pugh, former NFL offensive lineman and investor at IDM Companies. A little bit about our guest. Justin is a seasoned NFL veteran with 11 years of experience, having spent 6 years with the New York Giants and 5 years with the Arizona Cardinals. He is a graduate of Syracuse University, where he earned a degree in finance. Justin currently resides in Arizona, but is in the process of relocating back to the East Coast, specifically Florida and New York City. Although he is a free agent, Justin has strategically transitioned into his post-playing career by consolidating his investment and business activities into a family office alongside his trusted advisors. He has recently taken on roles with ESPN and SiriusXM, positioning himself for a successful 2.0 chapter, whether or not he continues his NFL career. He has also started a company called Athlete and Us that aims to help athletes as they transition out of professional athletics. Lastly, he also sits on a board of a nonprofit called Blue Light Next that helps college athletes get internships in real estate. Justin, welcome to the podcast.
I really wrote a long bio there, huh? I gotta shorten that one up. You did a great job reading it, so it worked out well. Thanks for having me on. I'm sure you've had a lot of distinguished guests, so I'll try to live up to those expectations.
I have a feeling you will. Thanks so much for coming and sitting down with us. I know we just covered your extensive background. I'm just kidding. It really wasn't much longer than any other people. I've had to read multiple paragraphs before, so appreciate it. But we'd love to learn a little bit more about your career path and some lessons learned along the way. So first, obviously, you've had an incredible journey in the NFL, now transitioning into commercial real estate. Can you walk us through how you first became interested in real estate and what led you to this career after the NFL days?
Yeah, well, that's a loaded question. It kind of dates back all the way to when I was younger. I never thought I'd be playing in the NFL to begin with, and decided I was going to get my degree in finance. I was going to go, work on Wall Street. So I decided that like Syracuse would just pay for my education, and then I would be off to a hot start, and I'd be able to go, have a career and be a wealth manager for athletes. I still wanted to stay involved and end up getting drafted, getting exposure to some folks working in commercial real estate, and saw a lot of the benefits, saw a lot of the tax sheltered cash flow benefits. And when you retire from the NFL, you go from, that paycheck steadily coming in to having nothing coming in. So my whole goal was to figure out the retirement plan, to have enough income coming through rentals to cover that. So kind of tripped and fell into my first land development deal. My wife and I bought an old bed and breakfast here in Phoenix, Arizona. It was 3 acres. Got it rezoned from commercial to residential. COVID hit. Everybody from California was moving out here in droves. Prices skyrocketed. So my wife and I decided, hey, instead of building the forever home, let's try to do a townhome community. So we went through that whole process and the zoning and trying to increase density. I ended up not being able to take on that deal myself while still playing, only 7 years into my professional career. So I ended up doing a 1031 exchange, had to learn all about that. So my first foray into development and entitlements really was fun. I was successful, so I was hooked. And the company that I ended up doing this 1031 exchange with offered me a deal to come see how the sausage was made. They said, hey, during your off seasons, come work for us and come see if you like this commercial real estate game. And I was hooked ever since. And that was four years ago now.
Wow, that's amazing. A lot of things happened in that deal, and we're really happy that you're now in this space. So tell us a little bit about some parallels that you see from the discipline in the NFL, strategy required in football, and then what's also needed in the real estate world.
Yeah, well, I think the position that I specifically play in football, offensive line, really lends itself to development. You have 5 guys coming from all walks of life, different backgrounds, different upbringings, different views on the world. And I realized that when I got into development and I saw my first ground up project, and I guess I should say this, the company that I worked for is a fully integrated firm. They do all the pre-development work. They own their own GC arm, and they manage all their properties. So you have a lot of different people from a lot of different walks of life. You're dealing with political environments. You're dealing with the private lending environments. You're dealing with investors. You're dealing with property managers, the general contracting. You're dealing with the subcontractors. So a lot to unpack there. It is a team sport, development. And that is what I found out. And what I love most about it is, as an offensive lineman, we would do offensive line dinners every Thursday. We would go out to, we would do everything together. We lift weights together. We're like a pack of wolves. And I saw the parallels of like, hey, what it takes to be a great offensive lineman and a great teammate is the same qualities that it takes to be great in real estate. Treating people with respect, showing up on time, being able to work well with others, resiliency. And some of those skills that athletes have learned throughout the course of their careers really run over into real estate. So a lot of people get involved in the brokerage side to start. There's part of me that wishes I start there, but I ended up starting with a family office, a fully integrated firm, a big developer, and I got to see some very large projects to start. So I got some really good exposure, and it opened my eyes, and it showed me like, hey, if you can work well with others, if you can find the right consultants, put the right team together, you can have a successful project. So that's what got me excited. That's what's kept me hooked. That's what's kept me networking and meeting everybody. It's the reason I'm on this podcast right now.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll talk a lot about the way that you build your brand and some of the strategies and things like that you use a little bit later. But I love those parallels. I think that's extremely beneficial. A lot of the people that we do have on the podcast are on the brokerage side, but it's really nice to be able to see that. Lucky that you got everything right in-house. So I'm sure with your excellence in networking, you've had probably a lot of mentors throughout your day. So give us a little bit of insight into who some of your mentors were and maybe how they shaped your path. So both either in football, commercial real estate, et cetera. Give us an insight into that.
Yeah, well, I grew up, my mom was kind of the rock. My parents got divorced when I was young, so I had my mom and my sister when I was super young. My mom was a school teacher. She always just hammered home education above all else. She remarried when I was about 6, 7 years old to my stepfather, who worked in construction. He was in project management. He worked for a company called Skanska. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of it. A very large developer out of Sweden, actually. So my mom taught me the benefits of education. My stepfather and my 2 older stepbrothers taught me the benefits of hard work and a little bit of hazing along the way. I was the only boy, so I kind of got my mom treated me like a little spoiled brat at times. I got 2 older stepbrothers, and they were like, hey, no, you're taking out the trash, you're mowing the lawn, you got to work your way up. And my stepdad always instilled this in us. He's like, you either learn how to do it, learn how to change a tire, learn how to change the oil, nail in, hammer, whatever you have to do, or make enough money where you could pay someone to do it. And I decided early on I wasn't great at carrying the plywood and the sheetrock when we would build like a shed, or my stepdad actually built a mountain house that we grew up going to. And that's where I fell in love with football and education. I was like, yeah, I don't want to be out here doing this manual labor. So education was very, very important. And then education led me to Syracuse. That led me to football. And so those were really 2 early on very big mentors for me. And then I got drafted, and an uncle of mine, and I'm now actually going to be becoming partners with him in a registered investment advisor company. He managed all my money as I got into the NFL, and he really taught me about the business and the financial world. I was probably going to go work for him if I didn't play football, and he was another very huge mentor for me throughout my career. And then as I progressed, it's the company that I went and worked for. The CEO, his name was Jeff. The COO, Jason Larson, just 2 very close friends. The head of the construction, Jordan Gaither. Those folks were huge mentors in this space. And then every day throughout my career as I network, I don't want to say like there's just one person I go to that's a mentor for everything. I try to pull bits and pieces of people that I meet and how they interact, how they do their business. And I try to create this, super mentor out of all of them. And that's really what I've taken. But those are some very key defining moments throughout my career and people that were very influential. 3 ended up being family, but I've had some great coaches, some great teammates along the way that have taught me a lot about business, and I'm very grateful to them as well.
That's wonderful. It seems like you learned a lot of lessons, especially early on, even just as a kid, through your family and your brothers and your mom and all of that. And then obviously your uncle managing money. And we'll talk about how you help some athletes do that as well. But what are some of the key lessons that you learned early on to maybe build this super mentor, right, that were crucial to your career's development?
I've read this book. It's called Who, Not How. And it's very much so all about your network, who you can tap into, and going and not having a network that's fake, that's all about like what's in it for me. When I meet somebody, I don't ask them for a thing. I don't need anything from anybody. I really want to have the right people in my life, because you are a reflection of who you surround yourself with. And I found that on early in my career. It's like, hey, do you want to be like Eli Manning? Do you want to be like Justin Tuck? Do you want to be like Zach Diassi? These New York Giants that went on to have amazing careers, not only on the field, but off. But do you want to handle yourself the right way off the field? And really changing that perspective. When you're young, you don't realize that how much you do will come back on later in life. And if you're nice to that person when you're 6 years old in first grade, I still remember the kid that was the bully in sixth grade or whatever it was. And that is something that has proven true time and time again. So I think I learned a lot of those valuable lessons early on, and it's a reason why right now I use networking as a superpower, because when I put I have the New York Giants helmet and the Cardinals helmet here for those who don't see it visually but are listening, I tie into that network, and I want to be a minnow and they're the whales, and I'm just going to catch the crumbs and leverage that alumni network, that fan base. Syracuse University is another great one. There's very successful people that come out of all of those programs, and I'm just trying to learn, listen, and accelerate my growth by who, not just how. Reading books is great, but putting it into practice is even better.
For sure. I love that. I mean, putting your best foot forward always. And you still remember that bully from sixth grade or, from 6 years old, right? People are always going to remember how you make them feel, right? Maybe not exactly what you say or what you do, but always remember how they make you feel. So I love hearing that. Do you have any favorite mistakes particularly, or moments that maybe you didn't recognize at the time turned out to be essential lessons, or maybe even a course correction?
Yeah, I look at investments that I made. You come from, like I said, my mom was a school teacher. My stepdad was in the construction business. So I didn't come from money. I didn't come from knowing how to handle this. So the sudden wealth creation, the only way I could relate it to our listeners is like, go get a scratch off today and pretend like you maybe you hit it, maybe you win a few $100, but imagine you got drafted as like a first round draft pick, and the change overnight, all of a sudden problems changed. It wasn't just like, how am I going to pay for Subway or Chipotle this week? It was like, how am I going to handle my trust and living will, and how am I going to deal with some of these financial issues? People coming at you from all different angles, asking for help, asking for you to send their family somewhere, or random cousins that I never knew existed. Now all of a sudden they were huge fans, and I had to get them tickets to a game. So a lot of those different things, that was a huge learning experience. It was learning how to deal with this sudden wealth and how to manage it and how to leave a legacy. And now that was probably the first major pillar when I got drafted. It was like a culture shock. My life changed overnight. I was in New York City, which in my opinion is the best city on planet Earth, and it's the mecca of the financial markets, and a lot happens there. There's some other great cities, don't get me wrong. I'm not bashing. I just am very New York biased.
It's New York or nowhere for me, even though I'm sitting in Los Angeles right now.
It's all right. It's in your heart. New York is a mindset. It's a mindset. I grew up in Philadelphia.
It's a mindset.
I grew up in Philadelphia, but New York is where my life changed forever. And then as I transitioned out of the NFL, or I'm still potentially going to play this year, thinking about purpose in life after football, and those are very two key areas. And learning through mistakes, learning, hey, who are the right partners you want to have in business or in life? There's things that your life partner is probably the biggest partnership you're ever going to choose, and making the right decisions. And then off the field in the investment world, I've made some bad investments. I made two bad investments, And that's something that I learned. It's almost like getting my MBA on the fly because I've been able to sit shotgun on some of these investments that I'm a part of, and it's made me better and it's made me stronger and it's taught me valuable lessons. So I think every time you make a mistake or you have that mess up or that hiccup, you can go back and say, well, what did I do wrong here? And that's what I did, evaluating, and don't make the same mistakes twice, because in my profession in NFL, guys that make repeat mistakes, the same ones over and over again, they don't have a job. So that's something that I try to take into the real world as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of lessons that you've learned. Are there any key fundamentals within your work ethic that you do to maintain in your career today? Any daily habits, anything, whether it's CRE related, morning meditation, routine, etc.?
I think health is wealth. That's like the one thing that I didn't know early on. I would probably had a few too many cocktails, ate a few too many pizzas and pastas. And when I was in New York, it's hard to stay away from the good food. But when I got to Arizona, I used to be 330 pounds. Offensive lineman, like we're paid to be big and unhealthy.
Big man.
and I completely overhauled that whole strategy. And now I'm 270 pounds. I've lost 60. I'm going to lose a few more. But really taking my health into consideration. So I think that's the one thing that I always put first is my health, whether that's doing the workouts or depending on what you're doing for your career, like you got to, preface it, but getting outside more, moving. I have all the saunas, the cold tub. I do all that stuff. And I'm not saying you have to, jump in a freezing cold river. Whatever works for you to get out and move and make sure your body can move, because you want, what's the point of doing anything in life if you can't enjoy it later on? So being able to make sure you can move, you can be healthy, what you put into your body matters. I'm not a big drinker. That was more because of football and trying to prolong my career, but it's definitely changed in how I take care of myself from that standpoint. So physically is definitely number one. And then when it comes in terms to work ethic, it's just putting in the reps. It's just following up. It's doing what you say and saying what you're going to do and following through. And that's something that I found not a lot of people do. So as I started taking this internship, I just saw how our CEO followed up, how he was always on time. It's funny thing is just like learning how to show up to a meeting a few minutes early to meet that person and leave that impression of like, hey, I value your relationship to show up on time. And those are just traits that I learned through playing football. I was never the biggest, the strongest, the fastest, so I always had to pair what I had physically to what I was going to bring to the table mentally. It's like, hey, you're going to meet somebody, look them up on LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a superpower. Like, go see what they've done in their life, see the network they have, and see if there's common ground. So just little things like that have gone a long way, and it's paid dividends. And then obviously, I should say this is a very I have a cheat code. I get to leverage a partnership with probably the largest business in North America, in the NFL. So I constantly am leveraging the NFL, the New York Giants, Arizona Cardinals, and Syracuse University of like, hey, I played football here. I'm doing X, Y, and Z. Would you be interested in having a conversation? And that is another very much a key to success. I can't act like that isn't helpful, but I leverage it more than most NFL players do, because guys try to shy away from it. I embrace it more than anything, because now that I'm on the end of my career, the end of this arc, potentially on the outside looking in, I realize how many doors it could open for you, and really using that to my advantage.
For sure. You said so many things, both from a personal perspective, professional perspective. Getting out, moving, it not only helps your physical, but also the mental health, making sure that you're doing the reps right there. I mean, that's huge. There are so many people in sales, right, that aren't following up and who aren't, taking that extra care to show up on time and, build that brand. So diving into a little bit of that, I know we said we're going to dive into some of the ways that you set yourself apart. So you spend a lot of energy on brand building, on social media, which has brought you a lot of success. So give us a little bit of an insight into, are there certain things that you do every day? Obviously, you mentioned leveraging your network. So any of our listeners can leverage that, even if they're not a part of the NFL. But what are some other ways that you are building a strategy for your own business, and how can maybe some of our listeners take that away as well?
Yeah, well, you first mentioned social media, and there's a guy that works in real estate that put together this event, strip mall guy, Don. He's out now. We can say his name. He's not just a strip mall guy anymore. But
We have photos of him.
I met with, yeah, exactly. I met with Don in New York, and he's like, hey, you don't understand the amount of people that are out there that are lurking. He always talks about lurkers, and there's these CEOs of the top companies that they get their information through social media. So using social media as a positive and not a negative. You don't have to have your face on there. You don't have to be on LinkedIn and put it out there, but interacting with that community, whatever that is, talking about it. If it's real estate, it's real estate. If it's private equity, if it's VC, if it's just sports, if it's your local sports team. And as you start building your reputation and brand, it comes back around. You interact with folks. You generally show interest in the things you like, and it truly comes back around. So after meeting with Don, he said, just talk. You like talking about the business of sports. Why don't you just start tweeting about that? So I did. I started tweeting about the business of sports. I started talking about real estate, how they intertwined in my world, and kind of just my story and how it made sense to me. And it resonated with some folks, and started my own little podcast, started talking about, if you just got cut, what should a player do? If you've gotten injured, what should you do? I found out the fans didn't really like that as much. They wanted to hear more about their favorite team. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to give them a little bit of Giants insight. I'm going to give them a little bit of the Cardinals insight. But then on the back end, I'm going to slip in some of the things that I want to talk about. So it's a little bit of a give and take. So knowing your audience, interacting with your audience is huge. And I've done that. And then it's keeping the NFL as a partner. That is a major, major goal of mine, that a lot of times players look at the NFL, and when I say the NFL, like the owners and Roger Goodell, NFL operations, they look at it as the principal's office. Like, I'm only going to go see them if I mess up. It's like going to see your boss or your CEO. Typically, they're calling you into the office when things aren't going well. But you realize if you have them as a partner, all the benefits that can come with it. You get access to their network. You get access to their Rolodex of information or the wealth of knowledge that they hold. So really leveraging the NFL as a partner. And we've set up some projects to work with the NFL this year. We can probably get into those later. We're doing like an executive education program with NYU and the NFL. And kind of, that's why I started that Athlete and Us brand. But really when someone looks you up, if you don't give them something to say about you, they're going to have their own opinion. And in the NFL, that was about my play on the field. So if I went to the beat writers and I said, hey, I'm looking to do X, Y, and Z this week. I'm looking to, have a great game. I'm the reason I feel great physically. If I don't tell them all the things to put in their article, they're going to come up with their own storylines. In New York, the media is going to have something to say. So that's another thing. If you control your own narrative, you know what the perception of you is out there. And if you don't, it will be someone else peddling your story. And do you want them? Are they going to tell it as well as you'll tell your own story?
Wow, I love that. That little last nugget right there. I mean, just create your own narrative, because people are always going to want to talk about you. So give them something good to talk about, something authentic. You brought that up earlier, and just, be yourself. So really appreciate that insight. Getting into a little bit more of your realm of work in the commercial real estate space, I'd love to learn more about this second phase of your career a little bit more in detail. So you've been involved in ground up multifamily development in Phoenix. Can you share more about how you got into this area, maybe some challenges that you faced and what you've learned along the way?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I kind of alluded to it early on. I bought this 3-acre bed and breakfast that had like 21 units. Unfortunately, the woman who owned it forever had passed away. Her kids had inherited it, and they weren't going to continue to run it, and it kind of was dilapidated. The team doctor from the Arizona Cardinals, he had a family member that was going to buy it. It fell through, so the deal kind of fell into my lap. So once I ended up buying the deal. There was some rezoning going on with the property, and I mentioned that earlier. There was another bidder that was involved aside from me, and the neighborhood kind of got behind me. The other bidder was in a business and was going to keep the commercial usage, and the neighborhood wanted a residential user in there. So that's kind of how it fell into my lap. And as soon as I got through that process and ended up not building it, but 1031 exchanging out, when I went to work for the company, IDM Companies, they said, hey, when you do these 1031 exchanges, you're going to become an LP investor. And that's how I started out. So really that first deal was more lucky than good. I really wasn't like out there as a land developer. I didn't know what I was doing. I tripped and fell. And I will give myself a little bit of credit. I know what good real estate looks like, and I know location, and I know like the optics of like, okay, there's this beautiful mountain back behind here. There's, there's a golf course right next door. I would want to live here. And that's why the value was created. So I will give myself a little bit of credit. My wife and I, she obviously has the eye as well. But then I started to learn the business. And as an LP investor, I invested in 5 specific deals in Phoenix. And it was great. The deals were ground up. You refinance out, you hold on to it forever. And I'm just like, all right, I'm going to collect this cash flow. This is going to be my retirement. And, you refinance out through proceeds of a loan. You don't get taxed on it. So it's a great way that a lot of people probably listening right now. It's a lot of reason why these folks are getting into real estate. Those were all the positives. Now let me get into the negatives. You invest in Phoenix, which was a darling during and just post-COVID. But then there's a ton of supply that comes online. Then interest rates just spike historically like we've never seen before over the course of a year. And you own some dirt that you're going to be stuck into for a little bit longer than you anticipated. You can't break ground because, lumber prices have skyrocketed. All of a sudden, the story of Phoenix isn't as great because there's these concerns of water and shortages of water down the road. We've navigated them all. 3 of the 5 projects are under construction. Feel very good about, there is a story of supply in Phoenix and the issues there. I feel good that there's not a lot of new construction happening. So yes, there is some supply coming online, but 2 years from now, I have a hold forever for the next 30, 40 years model. I still believe in the story of Phoenix. The water ended up being overblown. It was more of a political issue. And there's one place in Phoenix that 100 years from now, if they don't plan starting today, they could have shortages in water. So I think that was blown out of proportion. And then I got exposure to what interest rates can do to an entire industry if you think that they can't rise 500 basis points overnight or in the course of a year. And that has been very eye-opening to make sure I have that diversification, to make sure I'm not just heavily loaded into real estate. I have equities, I have bonds, I have some VC exposure. So that was very eye-opening. It's something that I'm still navigating as we speak because rates are still where they're at. And I'm sure a lot of people out there are listening. But I did learn from a great CEO. He doesn't over-leverage. He builds, for I don't want to say a very low basis, but a lower basis than a lot of the competitors out there. But it was a great experience for me to learn the pros and the cons throughout this 5-year stint that really is going to help carry me into the next phase, which will be doing my own projects, some smaller stuff. And I'm looking back on the East Coast, back where I have some connectivity. So I have a good partnership group there. I bought into this investment firm that has, a good track record. So hopefully I'll be able to leverage the two to do some projects back east.
Yeah. So keep going on that, Justin. So I know you started a family office to handle your real estate deals. So tell us a little bit maybe about what some of those long-term goals are. Are you exploring opportunities more nationally or back east? Is there a specific market that you're going to be focused on next and why? So tell us a little bit about that.
So when I say family office, I'm not like the Rockefeller family or Jeff Bezos. So like I don't have a family office in the sense of I have my own, everyone on staff. I'm third partying out. And the way I view family office, and I've gone back and forth with folks on this, is it's almost like if you don't put the narrative out there and you don't defend your own brand, someone's going to create it for you. It's the same in the investment space. So I'm going out there and I'm telling everybody, hey, this is what I'm looking for in my investments. This is how I'm going to handle my money, because Justin Pugh is a family office regardless if it's formalized or not. So I brought on a fractional CIO that helps me underwrite not just my real estate deals, but some VC, some private equity deals. I have my uncle who handles all my equities, and that's kind of my team. I have a third-party CPA that helps me with my real estate. I have third party. So I don't have it all in-house. So when I say family office, it's formalized in the sense of like, we have a mission, we have a goal, we know what we're trying to achieve in certain areas. Like, I'll give you an example. I've never really invested in the VC space, but I realized with my network and my connectivity with the NFL, I can get sweat equity in a bunch of companies that I never would have otherwise. So there's a few out there right now that I'm working with, that health and wellness space, travel space, 2 in the health and wellness space, actually, 1 in the football space and data analytics. So there's a few out there that I'll hopefully be able to not only invest a little bit, but I'll also be able to gain some sweat equity. And I'm leveraging who I am and what I can bring to the table to get those. When it comes to the real estate and what I'm doing on a personal level, I look at my life in like 3 pillars. The middle is relevancy. When, I've been playing NFL for the last 11 years. It's opened many doors for me. But once that closes, how do I stay relevant and keep the NFL as a partner, like I've talked about? Media is how I stay relevant. And whether I wanted to do it or I didn't want to do it, I'm in the media space now. But it allows me to work together with the NFL league offices, with the union, stay connected to the players, and be able to give back. So relevancy allows me to do the 2 other pillars that I'm going to mention. It's probably the center pillar. It's the most important. Then I have like my for-profit arm, and I have like my nonprofit arm. The for-profit arm will be this family office build out. It's going to be like a multi-family office. I'm not super interested initially in working with athletes, just because it takes a very long time to build up trust within the locker room. And I don't want to just jump right in and say, hey, athletes, come invest with me, come do this. Because anytime someone tells you athletes are my main investor, red flags should go up, because why are athletes your main investor? And that is something that I almost want athletes. I have a CIO, Chief Investment Officer. He really is a CI no. I want him to say no to every single deal that's brought my way, because my uncle has told me this since I was very young. Money is like soap. The more you play with it, the less you have. And for athletes, everyone talks about our financial issues. If we can actually get really good at saying no and how to identify what's a bad investment, it's the best advice we could ever get. And there's horror stories out there. You can go look it up. But so when I go to this real estate side, it will be definitely more family office, institutional. I want to learn that business from the inside out and kind of do it that way. And once I've established a track record, maybe there's certain athletes that I want to work with. What I want to do on the athlete side, so the second pillar is this for-profit side, and then the third pillar is this nonprofit side. I started a company called Athlete and Us. We're helping athletes and meet athletes where they are in their career, whether that's a guy that's just getting drafted, a guy that's in college that now is getting paid through the new NIL, name, image, and likeness, or he's getting ready to transition out like myself. Help them figure out what they want to do with their lives and how they want to do it. So I'm the guinea pig in all of this. I didn't know I was going to do any of this, broadcasting, real estate. And then as I started to transition, I've gone and gotten the internship, had the mentorship in the space. And that's what we want to do with this company. So we're having a week partnering with the NFL and NYU, March 23rd to the 28th, tentatively. It could change, but that's the date as of right now. And we're going to do an executive education program completely free to the players. The NFL has a benefit called tuition reimbursement, which every player gets a certain amount of money to use every year towards education. We're going to bring in some sponsors. We're going to do a day on financial literacy, venture capital, private equity, and then lastly, and biasly, my favorite day, the real estate day. So we're going to bring guys in. We're going to teach them all the things that we're talking about on this podcast, down to like how to set up your LinkedIn, how to send an email, how to follow up with a Google Meet invite, just things that everyone that's listening is probably going to laugh and take for granted. But teach guys to be, I look at every athlete like a little mini startup, and putting more sweat equity, not more, just putting sweat equity into these athletes to make them, go public or IPO, and in terms to keep the analogy going. But we have such amazing qualities that we bring to the table that we mentioned earlier, the resiliency, the ability to work with others, all the things that makes athletes great on the field can make them great in the business world. And it could be any avenue. It can be financial management, brokerage. Brokerage is a great place. I think a lot of athletes could be successful. So hopefully this week will lead to a lot of athletes having the ability to go out into the world, feel confident sending that email, reaching out to their university or to the team they played for, leveraging that network, and building something that they can be proud to go to once they're done playing. So it could be media. We have an arm called Athlete Podcast Network, We're calling this Biz Week. We don't want to mess with Michael Bloomberg Business Week. We're going to call it Biz Week. And NYU has been a great partner. The NFL has been a great partner. So we're hopefully going to do some cool events around it, like go to a Knicks game, go to Comedy Cellar, which is like a historic comedy club in New York City, have some laughs, learn a lot, and start creating this ecosystem of athletes that are there to support one another. So that's it's in the process right now. So hopefully that will be there. And that kind of is the third pillar, and all that supports my life, my family, my daughter. I have a 7-month-old, so there's a lot to look forward. And married, 7-month-old, all the good things that come with starting a family.
That was awesome to hear all of those different pillars and how that makes you and what our listeners can also derive from that. So you were talking about giving back. I mean, it seems to be obviously a really big pillar in your life. Give us a little insight, peel back the onion. What drives this passion, and how do you envision, all of your charities and things like that evolving in the future?
It starts with my mom. I talked about her being one of my mentors growing up. She was a teacher for 35 years. So teachers just innately are philanthropic. Yes, they get paid. Don't get me wrong, but they're not getting paid as much as they should. They're out there to build, hopefully successful members of society like you and I. So my mom would always have me come back and speak to her class about goal setting. And that was just the one thing. And we always talked about this acronym, SMART goals. It was like specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time bounded. And just people that write down their goals and look at them every day, increases the likelihood of success. And I've carried that through. And I would do a camp for kids. COVID kind of messed up my camp in my hometown. But I would tell everyone, like, you're sitting in this seat right now, or you're sitting on this field. I was once sitting in your same shoes. Why can't you be the next person to make it to the NFL or be the next big CEO? Because if you want to make it anywhere in this world, you have to follow really the same blueprint. You have to work hard, show up, be on time, all the things we've talked about. But if you want to be the president, you got to do well in high school. You got to do well in college. You have to do the extracurriculars. And if you don't become the president, maybe you become a senator. Maybe you just become, a doctor or a lawyer. And those are successful members of society. So I've always attributed back to those early days with my mom and kind of what she instilled in me, and just always shoot for the stars, you land in the clouds, or whatever that saying is. It definitely has rung true for me. I also am part of a board. I sit on a board for a nonprofit called Blue Light Next. It was started by a great man. His name is Mike Tepedino. Sold his company to JLL and started this company called Blue Light Next. And it's helping athletes collegiately, men's and women's divisions 1 and 3. The only prerequisite is you play a sport in college. And what they do is they help them get proficient and get Excel training, Argus training. There's webinars, there's seminars, and they will help place college athletes into internship programs. Because the example that he always gives is the girl that's trying to qualify for the Olympic qualifiers, is trying to run the 4-minute mile, has to go to Denver in the summer, and she can't go get the same internship that a kid might that isn't an athlete. And we've found and partnered with 20 organizations, all the way from like the JLLs of the world to every big player in the real estate market in New York City, which is globally in that sense. They are going to hire some of our kids that go through this program. So kids will go through this program. They'll get Argus Excel training. They'll go through the webinar series, learn interview prep, learn how to get their LinkedIn set up. And after that, they will get opportunities for real internship and mentorship, which I talked about the importance of that earlier. So that's another avenue. And that's kind of what really gave me it made me want to do something like this for NFL players, because people don't think NFL players need help. We almost need more help than the kid that went to college, because we have had our hand held since we were now 13, 14 years old. Kids are getting paid in high school to play sports. And the problem is always going to get worse. We have had our hand held, that we've been told when to be, where to be, how to be since we were that young. And when you go out on your own, it's hard to even make your own schedule. It's hard to even know like what to wake up and do. And purpose becomes such a driving factor for athletes. And I've struggled with this. What do I do? What do I want to be when I'm done? Football has defined me for so long that that is what I want to help give back to the next generation. And that starts with young kids as early as, elementary school. My mom used to teach, all the way to professional athletes and guys that everyone perceives has it all figured out, and they're still searching for it just like everybody else.
Yes, you hit on so many good things right there. I mean, just that last point, people are searching for it all the time, whether you're in elementary school or whether you're in the middle of your life. I can't
We're
tell you
all
how
just
many
big kids.
times.
Like we never really grow up. I feel like I was just in sixth grade and now I'm 34. I have a 7-month-old. We never grow up.
Right. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've led a team meeting and put SMART goals on, one of the slides. And we're like, all right, guys, we're going to redo this, right? Reset, reshape. Where do we want to go in the future? So to hear that you're already instilling that in such young folks is awesome. We might have some potential listeners on here that might want to be partners or sponsors. So what would you say to them who might be interested in supporting your mission?
Well, you can reach out on social media. I have a LinkedIn profile. I didn't have one for the last 11 years, which was a major blunder by me. Reaching out on LinkedIn, reach out to the folks at Crexi. They can get in touch with me. Twitter. Twitter's where I'm probably most active on the social media platform. So reach out on there. Those are probably the best avenues. My LinkedIn has my email and all that. So you can go check that out.
Amazing. Well, given your specialized background and expertise, I'm sure our listeners are curious about your answers to a few rapid fire questions and words of advice questions. Are you game?
I'm nervous, but I'm ready.
All right. First question. If you were given $50 million today and had to invest it immediately, what would your go-to asset type and location be and why?
I would, as crazy as this sounds, real estate's just tough right now. I would buy just A+ real estate. I'm not scared of office in Manhattan in the great locations like Rockefeller Center. Like people are scared of California. I still look at California as the best real estate on planet Earth. You go from like the ocean to the mountains. Now, politically, I might have to make some donations there to get some things changed. But I would go buy A+ real estate in great locations and hold it forever and just cash flow it and just refinance and just ride the wave. That is what I would do personally. And then I would take a portion of it and I would strategically partner with some startup companies that I can impact. And if I can write a check, but I also can provide sweat equity, I would do that. And I would do everything I'm doing just on a larger scale. I would go and you still have to build your brand, and I would want to go back and I would want to build out more programs for athletes like what we're doing with this Biz Week. If I had real money to also put behind it, we could just keep putting on amazing cohorts of this and not just do NFL. We could do, I know NYU wants to get every sport in there. So you think NBA, MLB, WNBA, women's soccer has franchises and they're blowing up. So that's probably what I would do. I would invest in companies that I can make direct impact on, but I would buy really, really good real estate, stuff that just when it has that wow factor when you look at it. So that's what I would do.
There we go. We love to hear it. Second question, and I promise this is not a trick question. What is your favorite tool or software that you use on the job?
Well, in football, it's film. So when I'm in football, it's watching film, breaking down what you did right, breaking down what you did wrong. When it comes to business, that's a good one. Now, like when it comes to real estate, obviously I just got exposed to the Crexi app. So when I'm looking for deals right now, I'm using Crexi all day long, but it just started. I just started. So I'm learning a lot about it. So shout out to Crexi. I would say right now it would be also LinkedIn or Twitter, where just the ability to network and reach out to individuals. So I think that right now would be like the superpowers for me. Yeah.
Absolutely. Networking is definitely a superpower. Thanks for sharing. And then last rapid fire question. What is the most common misconception about your job or the industry as a whole?
So when it goes to, I'll give you both for like football and maybe I'll give a little bit of real estate, even though I'm still that's a side hustle at the moment. But football is just like, we're big, dumb idiots. We show up on Sundays. It's we work one day a week. We're just born with this athletic gift that you don't have to work hard for. And that's like the furthest thing from the truth. Most of the guys that are the best athletes that I've ever seen don't make it because it's the game comes so easy to them that they forget to put in the work. They forget that like what's between the ears, your brain and your mind is what takes you to the next level. And I think that gets a lot of people in trouble. Complacency really kills a lot of careers. And I think that travels into, the real estate world as well. When people, this is a great analogy. I think it will go for both. You win with someone that's consistent. You know what you're going to get out of them day in and day out. The person that's super high and super low the next day and you don't know what you're going to get out of it, you can't win with that guy. And I've had coaches tell me that from the beginning of time, and that translates over into any profession. Be consistent. Be the person that can be relied upon every single day, that doesn't have one days where they're the best employee ever and then other days where they're the worst. And that is something that I think carries over to whatever you're in.
Wow. That was awesome. Love that advice. As we wrap up here, Justin, any parting words that you'd like to share with our audience? So whether it's athletes considering a career in real estate, anyone breaking into the industry, or just advice in general, let us hear it.
I would just say persistence. That's the one thing that I would continue to rep on. Like, you're not going to find what your advantages are. And I look, I can't sit there and tell you I didn't get a golden ticket by going to the NFL and being able to leverage that. But you have to find whatever competitive advantage you have and use it to your advantage. Now, I know there's a kid in Phoenix, Arizona right now. It's a realtor. And I met him at an open house. We just had a great conversation. And this kid follows up with me every single week. He shows me what he has going on. And now this same kid who is listing like a $500,000 house that I was looking at as an investment is listing a $24 million property in Phoenix. And it really goes to show, like, he didn't have the same advantages that I had playing in the NFL, but he works every single day. And I will tell you, work ethic outshines anything else you can bring to the table any day of the week. So I would say, if you're an athlete, if you're just graduating from high school, if you're just graduating from college, if you're figuring out what's the next step in your life, be persistent, almost to the point where you're annoying, hitting people up, trying to network, meet them for coffee, be relentless. And those are the people that have success. If I was going to build a company, those are the people that I want to hire.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing all of your insights. I know you're very busy, so we genuinely appreciate you spending the time to sit down with us. I know you mentioned a little bit of where people can find you, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc. So definitely check Justin out there. And thanks for everyone who tuned in today. So really, really appreciate it. Thanks so much, Justin.
Ashley, thanks for having me on. We'll see you at the next Twitter, X, strip mall guy, gala, Bob Knackle, all of the above.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We would not miss it for the world. Thanks again for everyone who joined in today. If you enjoyed this episode, do not miss the next one. Visit Crexi.com/podcast and sign up to get the next episode delivered straight to your inbox. Of course, you can also subscribe to the Crexi Podcast on your favorite podcast app and check out our YouTube channel for video recordings of each episode. Take care and be sure to tune in next time.